Welcome to the Insurance Marketing Organization podcast, where financial services marketing expert Seth Greene interviews IMO experts, executives, and top producers to share can't-miss tips on how they successfully manage their IMOs, grow their businesses, create great relationships, and influence the industry. And now, here's your host.
Okay, welcome to the podcast. I'm Bruce Corris, filling in for Seth today. And I'm talking with Tarun Chopra, who brings a couple of different things to the table here. Number one, he is the CEO of Clements International, which is a very interesting insurance company. Number two, he is also a member of the board of directors of the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers. So you get to work with insurance agents, and you, of course, get to work with insurance clients. So let's start with a little bit about how you got started in this whole world of insurance. Tell us about your early career, because you got some interesting stops on the way before you got to Clements. So talk a little bit about how you got started in your career and then what led you to this field.
Sure. Glad to be on the podcast, Bruce. So I have definitely had an interesting career in the sense that I have the unique distinction of having lived and worked on 4 different continents. I actually grew up in India, and I did my early education in India. I started working in India with Ernst, and then I worked for Whirlpool Corporation, so the global home appliance player. Then I moved to Australia and did my MBA in Australia, and I did a small stint with BCG while I was in Australia. Then after that, moved to US, moved to Michigan to work for Whirlpool again. And with Whirlpool, I traveled and worked in Europe as well. And, all of these roles in my early career, I have a chartered accountancy, which is the CPA equivalent. So my first background in terms of professional certification is finance and accounting. So my early career was very defined by finance and accounting roles. But once I moved to Michigan, when I worked for Whirlpool Corporation and their head office in Benton Harbor, Michigan, one of the roles I did was in marketing. So I was the brand manager for KitchenAid, and so KitchenAid stand mixer and stand mixer attachment and accessories. Then I worked in corporate planning and development. And after that, I moved to Fannie Mae, which was my first foray into financial services, broadly speaking. At Fannie Mae, I was first the director for business analysis and decisions group. So again, focused very highly on the analytical side of the business. And then I happened to be at Fannie Mae when during the 2008 crisis, and when Fannie Mae was taken over by the government, I was the CFO for the HASP program, which is the Homeowners Affordability and Stability Program, meant to modify mortgage terms for a $50 billion program set by Treasury as under TARP. And in 2010 is when I moved to Clements Worldwide, which is a global insurance broker. And that was my first foray into insurance, actually. I had no insurance experience prior to that. But for the last 11 years that I've been at Clements, obviously, I've learned a lot about Clements along the way, as well as the insurance industry in general. So that, in a nutshell, is my background and my experience with insurance.
Well, to jump off a little bit on something you said about your time at Whirlpool, you definitely mixed things up a little bit in your career. So you got to Clements, and one of the questions we always like to ask people is how your company differentiates yourself from the competition. Well, Clements, just by nature of what you do, being an international company like that, is a differentiator. There's not a lot of companies that have that marketing niche and that focus. And you talked about you living on 4 continents. I was on the company's website, and the entire management team of Clements has lived in various places around the world. It's not just an international company in terms of its clients, but it's an international company in terms of the people running it and working there. So talk to me about what you do there, what Clements does, and how Clements has grown under this very interesting target market.
Sure, Bruce. As you rightly pointed out, Clements is definitely a specialty company. It is very unique. We have been in business since 1947. So this year we'll be completing 75 years of our operations. And as I said, we are, from an industry classification standpoint, an insurance broker. But based out of Washington, D.C., that's where the world head office has always been. But the one unique thing about Clements is we don't tend to write domestic business. Our specialization is providing insurance solutions to individuals and organizations outside their home country. We come into play when there is a cross-border element to any transaction. Mm-hmm. So to give you some examples, we write personal line insurance as well as commercial line insurance. On the personal lines insurance, our key target segments are individual expats who are stationed outside their home country, working in different jurisdictions, whether on a job posting or maybe digital nomads, and more recently. But one of our biggest segments is the Foreign Service or the State Department, where we work with a lot of embassies and consulates around the world in providing property as well as auto insurance to the individuals who are posted in those embassies and consulates working on missions. And actually, the company started by providing insurance to the U.S. State Department employees for the U.S. embassies and consulates around the world. So we work with U.S. embassies, Canadian embassies, in some cases British embassy as well, and other embassies around the world. On the commercial side, we work a lot with international education. So American schools, British schools, for example, are all by definition outside their home country. So we provide health insurance to the faculty of those institutions. We work a lot with UN and UN agencies, as well as UN affiliates and UN partners. They work in developing parts of the world. And by nature of what UN does or UN agencies do, they are global organizations. We work a lot with NGOs in sub-Saharan Africa. We work a lot. Another big segment for us is the security industry, the security contractors, or construction companies working in conflict zones around the world. And we also have an affinity division where we work with the aviation industry, particularly pilot associations, as well as relocation companies. So it's a very unique business in terms of, as long as there is mobility, as long as there are people and organizations looking to expand beyond their home environment, we come into play.
So the client is in one country, but the coverage is in another, basically.
Yes. So okay. It could be both. On the individual side, the client itself or the person or the family are moving to a place outside of their home country. So a U.S. national may be moving to, Kenya, maybe moving to Thailand or somewhere in Europe. And that would be a typical personal insurance client for us.
Got it. Okay. So, 75 years of doing this, you've done something right over that time. Since you came on board the last 10, 11, 12 years, talk to me about what you've done and to help the company grow and how it's grown. Even with this unique market that you're in, you still have to get business. You still have to, people have to want to come to be a client of yours. So talk to me about how people find you and how you have made yourself more findable, if that's a word, over these last 10 years.
Absolutely. So one of the reasons or the main drivers for me coming to Clements was my background. I have worked with global companies. I've helped companies go global or set up global operations. And in 2010, when I was looking to move, or when I was first introduced to Clements, Clements was a single office entity, i.e. a Washington, D.C. based entity looking to go global, looking to expand their international reach as well as international operations. And that was very attractive to me. And that's really, what I wanted to do. It was a good fit with my background. They had not been international, so they needed a senior executive to take them international. So one of the ways I would say that I have made a significant impact to the organization in my early days is to help with that international expansion. So since coming on board, we set up operations in UK, and then we made an acquisition in UK and established our European base. After that, we opened an office in the Middle East to take care of the Middle East business in Dubai. And over a period of time, we've also been able to establish an office in Brussels, in Belgium. We've also have relationships in Amsterdam with a partner broker, and we are about to open an office in Ireland. So one big impact has been, following the philosophy that we have of being closer to the customer. In this case, we want to be physically closer in terms of providing the service in the time zone that our customers are in. And by physically being in those locations has definitely helped us gain some momentum. So that's one way, the physical expansion or the expansion of the business itself is where I've made one contribution. The other place I would say where I have made a significant impact coming into the business has been the transformation of the business since I've come in. So as I mentioned, it was a 60-year-old business, single entity, legacy business, legacy operations, things going well, but it needed to be transformed to a modern 21st century business. And that's where I think I've made the most impact coming into Clements, because we've been able to sell, but it's at the end of the day, it's also about understanding your client and about understanding the needs of your international participants, so to say, into the business. And or the stakeholders, I should say. And the way we grow first is through word of mouth. We have as you mentioned, we've been in business for over 70 years. We must be doing something right. So we've built this credibility. We've built, we're the leading provider of insurance solutions to the foreign service community today. 6 out of every 10 individuals who are posted are Clements customers. That is, that is a testimony to our service levels and what we provide on a worldwide basis. Same thing, we're a leading provider in the international education segment, as I mentioned. So that's another place where word of mouth matters. So in addition to that, what we've been able to do, obviously, is to strengthen our, SEO as well as PPC marketing campaigns, where we've been able to reach out. And over the years, we've also established our distribution network by tying up with different brokers and insurance companies around the world. We're proud to say that despite being in a few locations around the world, we are able to write business in over 170 countries, and it's been made possible through those relationships that we've built over the years or over the decades.
Got it. Yeah, relationships truly matter. So speaking of relationships, you have one with many other insurance people through your role on the board of directors of the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers. Talk to me about that organization. Talk to me about what it does. Talk to me about what you do there, because in that capacity, you're not just an insurance person. you're not just the CEO of an insurance company, you're working with insurance people all over. Is it an international organization or just in the US?
So just to, I'll explain what CIAB, or the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers, is, and then I can expand about my role at the council, as we call it. So CIAB is based out of Washington, D.C., but it is essentially the leading insurance association in the world. It has all the insurance agencies and brokers across US as well as around the world are members of the council itself, as well as they have insurance carriers around the world as members of the association at the same time. Though the council itself serves the needs of the insurance agents and brokers, but obviously the insurance agents and brokers cannot work without the insurance carriers, who are the capacity providers or the underwriters for the programs. So it's a complete and holistic approach to the insurance industry as such. And the council's key objective is to ensure that there is a good understanding of the needs and requirements of the insurance industry, and they are providing the right set of guidance as well as support to all their members, whether it's helping them understand the new trends, whether it's working with the government, as well as working on new challenges that we may face, especially in the technology space, as new entrants enter the market, and there are different ways of doing the same thing. So the council plays it plays a very instrumental role in the insurance industry itself, because it is the thought leader in terms of what's going on in the insurance industry. And as it relates to my specific role, as I sit on the board, it is about providing that strategic perspective to the board as a sounding member, where then the board helps the council take care of the needs of individual members who are members of the council. And at the same time, the council's set up, there's a legislative body which looks at different legislations coming out that have an impact on the insurance industry. There is a general oversight committee which looks at different elements of whether it's finance or legal or technology or marketing aspects of insurance. And then there's the third one where I play a broader role, or a more significant role compared to the other two committees, is the futures committee, which is where we look at the new trends that are coming in that either create an opportunity or a threat, and how do we tackle that at an industry level and equip our members to tackle those as we move forward.
Interesting. That actually segues right to my next question, which is, what new trends are you seeing? I was right there on my list. What new trends are you seeing? And following up on that, where do you see your company, back to Clements, where do you see your company in 5 years from now? What's your 5-year plan?
So in terms of the general trends, obviously the one trend is instant gratification. That, insurance used to be a very involved activity, and what individuals particularly are looking for is an instant, completion of that transaction. And it's almost a commodity where you're challenging the status quo. For instance, insurance, when you look at standard policies, they are 12-month policies, or if you look at an auto policy, it's a 6-month policy. And those are just standard terms, or the standard length of a policy. And where the world is transitioning now to is, well, if I'm riding my bicycle down the street, can I have insurance for the next 15 minutes? And so that is definitely a new trend. And it does go back to that instant gratification thing that, yeah, I need insurance when I want it, not, on a holistic level. So I can turn it on and off as I move through things. So that's definitely one big trend that is going on, that everybody's working through in terms of fulfillment. The other is on the data analytics side, where companies are looking at, as everybody wants to make a better decision, and insurance cost is not any different. So organizations wants to be better educated in terms of their decision making as it relates to their protection for their insurances. So there is a lot of emphasis not just on providing insurance itself, but providing those insights, all the valuable knowledge that you have based on whether historical data or current experiences is now something that is expected as opposed to a value add. So those two things. And then the third one is obviously getting into the the metaverse, and what that is still being defined from an insurance perspective. So what does that mean, and how does the insurance industry play a role in that is evolving as we speak. So to me, those are the three trends that definitely will redefine the future of insurance. Now, when it comes to Clements, what we are looking to do obviously is similar on the lines of what I just explained. If I look at us over the next 5 years, obviously, one, we want to be more visibly present from a global perspective. We are a global company, but we have limited presence. So we want to expand more from a physical operation standpoint. So that's definitely on the horizon. That's one of the things you will see in the next 5 years is us being that dominant player or a dominant brand in the expat industry or the international insurance industry through physical expansion. The other thing is the from a technology perspective, you'll definitely see a lot of upgrades or improvement in that customer experience, customer journey that we want to bring about. So that's another thing that we are investing heavily on and trying to stay ahead of the market, so to speak, from a technology perspective.
Knowing what you know now, if you could go back to the Tarun who started at Clements in 2010, or even further back, if you could go back to one of the Clements people 10, 15 years before that, knowing what you know now, what would you say? What advice would you give at that point?
Well, I think that's a two-part question for me. One is specific to Clements itself, and that has to do with the fact that Clements is a family-owned business. And prior to coming to Clements, I had worked for major corporations, and never worked for a family business before. And there is a certain way a family business is conducted. There are different dynamics when it comes to a family business, which I didn't have. And if I had known that coming into Clements, it would have made it even a richer experience, because the passion that comes out from the owners or the family itself, or the legacy that they want to talk about, or the emotions that you get to witness or see is very different than it is in a publicly listed company or in a general for-profit private company. So that was one thing that I wish I had known or gotten some guidance on prior to coming to Clements, but it has been all good. It's something I did not have. I think if I go back to my career, it is about, to me, it's more about a learning as opposed to something I knew. It's, you have to constantly reinvent yourself. And as you look at my career, it's been about going from finance to marketing to corporate strategy to running operations to then being the CEO. I credit all of that to this notion of reinvention. And to me, that reinventing applies both individually and for the organization. So as an organization, even at Clements, we've been reinventing ourselves and trying to, keep an open mind about what opportunities we have and what challenges we can face. So taking risk, taking ownership and taking charge of your destiny is something, you get a crash course early in your career, it always sets you up for success.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. I mean, when you worked for Whirlpool, you didn't work for Mr. Whirlpool. You worked for it is a different dynamic, and that's a good point, especially in insurance, because yes, there are giant insurance conglomerates, but there's an awful lot of locally owned agencies, and they have the opportunity to build their business and not worry about the structure of a huge corporation. It is a different dynamic, and it's an opportunity in a lot of little ways. A lot of ways. I'm glad you pointed that out. One of the ways that insurance agents or anyone gets business is through networking and things like that. And obviously, a lot of that happens on the golf course. And I know that you enjoy playing golf, but I want to talk to you about something else that you do, which is not too many CEOs do. You are a cricket player. That's not, I don't think I've ever interviewed a cricket player. So talk to me about that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was my first passion in life. My wife still believes that it's my second wife. The amount of time I spend on cricket. I grew up with it. It was obviously the dominant sport as I was growing up in India. And I still play it. There are actually 2 leagues in Washington, D.C. metro area. And I'm part of a team. In fact, I captain one at this point, or I did last year, and I'm going to this year as well. So it's something that's part of me and part of my upbringing. It's a game I've always enjoyed, and the British invented the game, but it is played quite a lot in what used to be the British colonies, and then it's a very well regarded sport in the world right now. Even US has a team right now. They just established one. So that's something. It's part of my life.
For the people that are listening to the podcast and not watching the video, you missed out on this giant smile that just lit up your face when you talked about that. It was fun to watch. How can people learn more about you and about Clements?
Sure.
Where can they go?
Yeah, the best place to go is www.clements.com. That's our website.
And it's CLEMENTS.
Yes, so CLEMENTS.com. That's our website. And if you want to reach out to me, I am on LinkedIn. And if you look up Tarun Chopra, TARUN CHOPRA, and if you type the words Clements next to it, I'm pretty sure it'll lead you right up to me. So that's how you can reach both Clements and myself personally.
Great. Thank you for being here. We've been talking to Tarun Chopra, the CEO of Clements Worldwide and a member of the board of directors of the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers. You have shared a lot of really interesting information today. I know our listeners are going to find it worthwhile. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad to be here, Bruce. Thanks.